That sudden silence,
Yeah.
after a door forces open, the adrenaline, that spike when a threat appears right there, maybe inside your own home. Welcome to the deep dive.
Where we look into the hard realities, the data behind self-defense.
Exactly. And today we are really digging into a fundamental question, one the statistics bring sharply into focus. Where are self-defense encounters most likely to happen?
And critically, what does that mean for your safety, for how you prepare?
Yeah. Forget maybe the dramatic scenarios you see sometimes. The truth, according to the numbers we've looked at, it hits much, much closer to home.
We've analyzed quite a few sources here. There's a big CDC study, the Centers for Disease Control, back from 2013.
Right, commissioned during the Obama administration.
Yes.
Right.
And we also have newer data like the 2021 National Firearm Survey. And they both point towards something pretty significant, something maybe overlooked about the geography of these situations.
Okay, let's unpack that. This unexpected battlefield, as you put it. The headline number seems to be, 78%?
That's the big one. 78% of defensive gun uses happen on your own property, not out in public, not somewhere else.
78%. Okay, let's break that down a bit more, because on property could mean a couple of things, right?
Right. So roughly a quarter, about 25%, happen inside the actual house, living room, bedroom, hallway.
The place you think is the safest.
Exactly. But then the larger chunk, it's about 53.4%, happens on the property, but outside the four walls of the house.
So, like, the driveway, the yard.
Precisely. Driveway, yard, porch, those kind of transitional spaces right around your home.
That really flips the script on where people might expect danger, doesn't it?
It does. The common image is maybe a dark alley or, a parking garage late at night.
But the data, it's pretty stark. It says the main stage for self-defense is literally at your doorstep or very close to it.
Which leads to a really critical point our sources raise. Are you actually prepared for that? Prepared for defense in the one place you probably let your guard down the most?
It's a sobering thought. I mean, think about just stepping outside to get the mail or, doing some gardening, mowing the lawn.
Mundane things. How often are you thinking about self-defense in those moments? The statistics suggest maybe we should be more aware, even in these familiar, seemingly safe spots.
Okay, so location is key. What about frequency? How often are we talking about defensive gun uses happening in the U.S.?
Well, the estimates do vary a bit depending on the study you look at.
That's common with survey data, right? Methodology is different.
Exactly. So that 2013 CDC study, it gave a really wide range, anywhere from 500,000, 500,000, up to potentially 3 million defensive gun uses per year.
Wow, that's a huge range.
It is. The more recent one, the 2021 National Firearm Survey, it comes in with a more specific estimate, around 1.67 million times per year.
Okay, 1.67 million, still a very large number.
A very significant number.
Yeah.
And while, the exact figure might be debated depending on the methodology, the overall picture is consistent. Defensive gun use is prevalent.
One source made a really interesting comparison, didn't it? About home insurance claims.
Yes, that was striking. The point was that more Americans likely use a firearm defensively each year than file homeowner insurance claims.
Let that sink in. We're potentially talking about millions of violent crimes being stopped, lives saved, because a citizen was armed and prepared to defend themselves.
Again, these are estimates based on surveys, so we need to acknowledge the variations. But the trend across these studies is pretty clear about the role armed citizens play.
Which brings us to another point, deterrence. It's not always about, a shootout. Sometimes just the presence of a defense tool is enough.
Absolutely. There was a really interesting anecdote, maybe more of an observation, from a former high-ranking FBI official.
Oh yeah, I remember this one. About dogs.
That's right. He mentioned that in all his years looking at home invasions, he'd never seen one happen at a home that had a dog.
Suggesting even just a simple early warning system, a deterrent,
can make a huge difference. And that applies to firearms too, statistically.
Okay, what do the numbers say there?
Well, in about 31% of defensive gun use cases, simply telling the attacker you have a gun is enough to stop the attack.
31%, almost a third. No shot fired, just the warning.
Exactly. And it goes further. The vast majority, and this number is remarkable, 91.1% of defensive gun uses don't involve firing a single shot.
Over 90%.
91.1%. The warning, or maybe just showing the firearm, is sufficient to de-escalate, to end the threat.
That completely contradicts the idea that self-defense always means lethal force, doesn't it?
It really does. It shows the primary value is often deterrence, not necessarily engagement.
And there was that ratio too, defensive versus offensive use.
Yes, the data suggests that for every time a firearm is used in a crime, offensively, it's used defensively more than 6 times.
A 6-to-1 ratio.
6 to 1, which again highlights the protective aspect that often gets lost in the wider discussion about firearms.
It provides crucial context.
Yeah.
Okay, so deterrence is powerful. What about when an attack does happen? There's this common advice or maybe misconception about just complying.
Right. Don't resist, just give them what they want. Our sources really challenge that notion, especially looking at victim outcomes.
The Department of Justice data, the National Crime Victimization Survey, it had some pretty stark findings, particularly for women.
Very sobering. Women who comply with an attacker, they are 250% more likely to end up injured compared to women who use a firearm to defend themselves.
250% more likely to be hurt if they comply?
Correct. And it gets even worse if they try to resist physically, but without a firearm.
How much worse?
In that scenario, women are 400% more likely to be injured compared to using a firearm.
400%. These aren't opinions, right? This is DOJ data analysis.
This is based on analysis of extensive crime victimization data. It's what the numbers show.
And are the trends similar for men?
Similar, yes, though the percentages are different. For men, complying with an attacker makes them 140% more likely to get injured compared to using a firearm.
Okay, still significantly higher risk.
Definitely. And as men try physical resistance without a firearm, they're 150% more likely to be harmed compared to armed defense.
So the data seems pretty clear across the board. Resisting with a firearm correlates with a lower chance of injury compared to complying or resisting unarmed.
That's what these particular findings strongly suggest. It underscores the potential disadvantage of passive compliance or trying to fight barehanded against a determined attacker. Now, let's flip the perspective for a moment.
Look at it from the criminal's point of view.
Exactly. There's a fascinating psychological statistic here.
The one about fear.
Yes. Apparently, 57% of convicted felons say they are more afraid of confronting an armed citizen than they are of the police.
Over half. More scared of the homeowner with a gun than the arriving officers. Why is that?
Well, think about it. Criminals understand response times. They know police might take, 10 minutes? 15 minutes on average?
Which, in a fast unfolding violent event, is an eternity.
Precisely. That time gap is huge. But an armed citizen, they're right there. An immediate, potentially lethal obstacle to their plans.
That makes sense. It also ties into that old saying you hear in training circles, right? About the speed of these encounters.
The 3-3-3 rule, or axiom.
Yeah, what is that exactly?
It's a kind of shorthand. 3 shots, 3 seconds, 3 yards, or sometimes 3 feet.
Okay. So incredibly fast, incredibly close range.
Exactly. It paints a picture of these things being sudden, intense, and happening right in your immediate space.
And when you combine that with the earlier stats, it forces you to picture that kind of event, that 3-second, 3-yard event happening potentially.
In your hallway, on your porch, in your driveway, not some distant threat, but right there. It really highlights the need for immediate readiness and decisive capability.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. What's the main takeaway from all this data?
Well, the biggest one, I think, is the location. The overwhelming statistical likelihood is that if you face a self-defense situation, it's going to be on your own property.
So preparedness at home isn't just important, it's statistically the most critical place to be prepared.
It seems undeniable based on this data. And the second major point is the effectiveness of armed defense, not just in stopping an attack, but often in preventing injury compared to other responses.
And often without even firing a shot, based on that deterrence data.
Exactly. The deterrent effect is huge, and the data on reduced injury rates for those who resist with a firearm versus those who don't is, well, it's compelling.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it leaves you with a pretty powerful thought, doesn't it? The place you feel safest, your home, your property.
Might statistically be the place you're most likely to need to defend yourself.
How does knowing that change things for you, the listener? Does it reshape how you think about your own safety strategy at home?
Does it make you reconsider the importance of being prepared, making informed choices about self-defense, even within those familiar walls on that familiar patch of land?
The numbers provide a stark perspective, something to seriously consider.
They offer a compelling case for a thoughtful, data-informed approach to personal safety, potentially including responsible firearm ownership and training, precisely because the threat is statistically closest to home.
Thank you for joining us for this critical analysis on the deep dive. This has been Tactical Edge, the Valor Tick briefing.